Hello YouTube, this is Captain Nav. Welcome to a new series, Challenging Approaches. Today it's going to be Innsbruck for the localizer DME runway 26, visual runway 08 on the PMDG 737 NGX. So first of all, we'll do a little briefing, looking at the chart for Innsbruck, runway 0826, LOC DME East Special. 4th of December 2014, and tower frequency there, LOC DME as 111.1 Oscar Echo Vector. Got 3.77 glide slope will be available for the approach as well, so we can have a reference there. Just a few notes, DME is required, and yeah, just a few notes for you to check. Nothing major there. There's no minima published on this plate. And then looking at this side again, just the altitudes on the way down. And once again, 3.77 glide slope, glide path, which is fairly steep. So we'll need to keep the speed under control, probably using flaps 10. Now looking at the visual part of the approach. So visual after LOC DME 0826 East. So we'll be coming down on the localizer, and at some point near Epsom NDB, left turn on a track of approximately 230 degrees, all the way to Innsbruck, or almost to Innsbruck NDB, and then stay within track line of 264, but inside of the track line we don't want to go too close to the terrain, and a right turn runway 08. Looking at runway 08, 1900 feet is the elevation. We've got a slight displaced threshold of about 100 meters and landing distance of 1900 meters, 3.5 degree glide slope, so it's fairly steep. Got some minima published there. 3700 is the minimal we'll use for a go-round climb gradient of 5%, which we have today, and then other minima published for various other circumstances. And finally, just notes basically saying that you've got to stay visual with the terrain at all times during the circling visual procedure, which we'll try to do. Just also terrain there, we'll see the mountains when we are breaking off from the approach, and then we fly over the ridge there with a few obstacles, and MSA 11.614.2, so I can see it's fairly high. So we'll jump now into the simulator. Here we are in the aircraft. So we are at 9,500 feet. Inbound towards Romeo Tango Tango NDB, QNH 1013 LNAV VNAV path, and as you can see, speed intervention 211 knots, which is more or less the up speed. So we got the terrain displayed already. We can see that it shows some amber, and yeah, we're just ready to start the approach. We were clear for the approach, and we set minima 3,700 feet. It won't appear on the PFD because it takes too much time to set the minima there. So starting the left turn away from Rattenberg NDB, flap up speed, and we'll have a little look around. Quite high mountains, obviously, a bit of snow now. Nice smooth turn, and at this stage we'll start thinking about bringing the speed back a little bit. So we go for flap 1 initially, and match the speed with the speed bug. Slowly decelerating, as I said, from the intercept of the localizer then will be on a 3.77 degree glide slope, which is very steep. So we'll need to have flaps 10 to have as much drag as possible for the descent. So flaps 1 for the moment, the speed is coming back nicely. Now we go for flap 5, match the speed. So at this stage we are all fairly high, no immediate threat from the terrain, and we are using this level phase to kind of come back on the speed. We're just about to intercept the localizer, however we'll fly it in LNAV. We match the heading 255 for the inbound course. Nice turn over the ridge, so we can see that we cannot start the descent straight away because of the ridge just under the aircraft, so we're gonna have to continue for a couple of miles, basically go on top of the ridge there and then start the descent into the valley. So as soon as we hit the descent point, then I'll take flaps 10 to keep the speed under control. So we can see we got the glide slope indication here, which is well, we briefed from the chart as well, there will be a glide slope available. But we are still obviously flying in VNAV path, otherwise at a level of altitude at the MDA we wouldn't be able to disengage the approach mode, and it would become a mess, so that's why we fly in VNAV path. So flap 10 now has been selected, and initially the speed is getting a little bit higher than the bug speed, but that's just also what the simulator is doing, so we'll ignore that for the rest of the time. It's a little bit like in the other videos, the VNAV is going a little bit up and down. It's not 100% regular, but that's it. So we are now established on the localizer using LNAV once again, and we are flying VNAV path. So VNAV path will keep all the restrictions along the descent. We got a couple of altitude restrictions, so we need to take care of these. We cannot go down in level change and burst all these altitude restrictions. So it's a fairly impressive scenery on the way down, flying towards the city straight ahead and following the river. So we can start already seeing the ridge I was talking about in the brief, where we're gonna turn left and then follow the side of the mountain, then come back runway 08. We can start seeing the runway already, runway 26. So still a fairly long way to go at this stage, but the speed is under control. We have flap 10 speed, LNAV, VNAV path. Everything is looking good at this stage. The rate of descent though is well above 1,000 feet per minute, but is acceptable at this stage. So we start configuring now. Gear down, flap 15, match the speed like always. I'll check if that start switch is continuous. APU from FSI panel, I'll switch off now. Recall is checked. Speed brake armed, green light, landing gear down 3 greens. The brake is 3, holding at flaps. So we'll keep flap 15 now until we get to the downwind leg. We don't want to configure and have all the drag or throughout the whole approach now. So we'll try to keep it flap 15 speed for the moment. So we can see we're approaching Apsan NDB, and soon to start the left turn to break off the approach. So we can preset it, as you can see, in the MCP, and as soon as we are ready for the turn, then engage heading select. Just an extra couple of miles and then we can start the turn and basically fly along the ridge. 1 to go. And getting ready to turn. We'll turn about now. I forgot to set 264 track line from Innsbruck NDB to kind of depict the area which we cannot trespass on the downwind leg. So flying over the ridge here, all the way along downwind and then back runway 08, as you can see from the mouse. So at this stage things happen quite quickly. Obviously still good visual, but things are gonna get fairly busy at this stage. So once we level 3700 with VNAV Alt, we'll press Alt Hold, which is about now. Usually VNAV Alt should keep the altitude fixed, but for some reason if you if you reset the missed approach altitude 9500 like I'm doing now with VNAV Alt, it's gonna go back to VNAV path and mess up the approach. So once we go VNAV Alt, press altitude hold, and then we can reset the missed approach altitude 9500 feet. We've just had terrain caution. Obviously we are facing the mountain there we talked about in the brief. We're gonna soon turn right and stay within that track line of 264 from Innsbruck NDB to stay clear of the mountains. However, we'll be flying quite close to the edge of the mountain, just above the ridge there, so it's still fairly challenging. So still flap 15 speed. We didn't configure fully for the landing yet. We don't want to add too much drag too early. But we're gonna have to start thinking about it now. We've got about 3 miles to go to the turning point. So flap 25 now, match the speed. Now we got FMC message, descent path unachievable, so init ref flap 40, 141, we have to reselect it. And continue the configuration of the aircraft. So flap 40, get rid of the flight director and add up the FPV, flight path vector. We check, we've got flap 40 green light, and we are clear to land. We've got the lights on as well. So just for my convenience, take up the PFD and DND, and that 3.5 on the circle there, you can see we stay fairly close to the 264 line. We cannot trespass it, but at the same time we cannot be too close from the extended runway center line, otherwise then the turn will take us way beyond the center line. So we've got to stay fairly close to the track line from Innsbruck NDB. And now we can start the right turn, disconnect the autopilot, the auto throttle. The only thing we cannot do as one pilot is to set the runway heading, but we'll assume it's set, and then start the descent as well. We've got about 800 feet per minute. We've got to keep the speed under control initially, and turning about 30 degrees of bank. We need to keep the bank as much as possible. There you can see, look at the predicted line, it's showing good at the moment. Keep the turn and try to keep the rate of descent under control. Keep the turn until we establish on final. Here's the runway, looking a little bit high, so we need to come down a little bit more. The speed is a little bit too high, coming back on the speed as well. And 1000 feet, it's looking good. We're obviously gonna have a high rate of descent, 1100 feet at the moment. The speed is still a little bit high, coming back slightly on the power. Got 1200 feet. That's okay. We'll try to not have more than 1000 feet below 500 feet. So once we pass the amber band on the PFD, the speed is now looking good, and still have 3 whites, so we're not too bad. And the rate of descent is getting under control now, so We've got 2 whites, 2 reds, looking good. Trying to get the center line, and at this stage we are about 100 feet above the ground, so we can ignore the puppy indication and concentrate on the touchdown zone.
50, 40,
That's the 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, and touchdown. Use the reversers. And 60 knots as to the reversers. And here we are in snowy Innsbruck. So as you can see, it's fairly challenging, the last part of the approach, the visual part, and it's quite difficult to get the last turn right, and then the final descent onto runway 08. It's a fairly short runway, and there's no much room for error. So I will leave you now with a replay of the approach with some music, and then I'll be back with some more features on this approach. Enjoy. Hello again, and well, I was wondering what it would be like to fly the approach in marginal weather, so I thought I would do it at the end of this video. So I set the weather at Innsbruck with the following: overcast at 2,000 feet and a visibility of about 8 kilometers, wind 080 at 5, just to keep it down the runway. So we'll just have a look, see what it's like. It's obviously quite scary. And we'll take the approach down just as we're about to turn left to break away from the approach. So we go down to the minima 3,700 feet, and we're just about to become visual there. It's obviously very marginal. And yeah, our good visibility is just fine. We cannot see too much beyond the aircraft, so we start the turn. And this time, yeah, we're facing the mountain, and we cannot see it on the left turn. So we just have to rely on the system. We can see though the ground, but the visibility there is not great. So we'll set the missed approach altitude 9,500 feet once again, and yeah, we can see on the left here quickly that visual with the ground, but the visibility is not great, and there's a little bit of effect as well with the windows and the sim. I'm not sure the visibility of 8 kilometers is accurately depicted. However, we'll take it for granted it's 8 kilometers plus, I guess. And the real world in these marginal conditions along the mountains, there will be low-lying cloud and stuff. So, and also it's bonus footage. So I will just continue the approach. So just about to turn right now. I like always stay within the 264 track. From Innsbruck NDB. We get all sorts of caution and warnings as far as the terrain is concerned. Looking down towards the runway, we can actually see the runway down there, so the visibility is not that bad, but as I said, with the simulator it's not perfect. But it kind of like shows you that in marginal conditions you would have to be very careful, because the mountains tend to attract quite a bit of low cloud and stuff. So although the minima is I believe 5 kilometers and 3,700 feet, it's obviously the maximum really we can do, because in other conditions it wouldn't be so great. So just about ready to do the final turn there. Like always, switch off the flight director, use the FPV. The flight director is switched off so that we don't have to fly through the flight director during the turn and the final descent onto the runway. And the FPV is used just to kind of have an idea of the glide path angle we are doing. So we can see during the base turn there, very limited visibility, but we can see the terrain all the way around. So it's all good. We keep the turn going. We get all sorts of cautions and warnings once again, but we can see the valley now. Some low cloud on the side of the mountains, but we're just barely below the cloud cover. It's really marginal. There's actually only 200 feet margin, and that's maybe why the visibility in the cloud base is just marginal. Now we're just about to roll final, and here's the runway. So it's very tight. So once again, coming back on the center line, adjusting the rate of descent. We can see on the FPV we got about 3.5 descent angle, which is good. And yeah, that'll be a nice approach. 500 feet now. We keep the descent going. The speed is good, more or less on the center line. All looking good. Approaching 200 feet above the ground. Looking for the center line and keep the rate of descent going, 850 feet per minute. And now we just ignore the puppy Continue, the speed is slightly starting to bleed off, 50 feet, 30, start the flare, come back on the power, and touch down at VRF. And that's it. Using the reversers, and let the auto brake do its job. 60 knots doing the reversers and braking manually. And that's it. Welcome to snowy Innsbruck. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Like always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. We've had more than 1,000 views now, so thank you very much for watching the channel. I hope you like it. You can find me also on Facebook and from time to time live on Twitch. So my name is Captain Nav. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.